Hello, folks. Welcome to Campaigniacs, the day after the election episode. I'm Murray Mandrick, political columnist for the Regina Lear Post, and with me are two exhausted friends of mine. Arthur White Crummy from the Leader Post, Phil Tank from the Star Phoenix. Just off the top, thank you guys for the good job that you have done, not just with this stuff, but with the whole campaign. I wish people knew how tiring this was for reporters, particularly old ones like me. You children, it's pretty easy. But let's get right to it.
Sorry, what? Right back at you.
You're a child compared to me, Phil. Let's get right to it. Let's play what were the biggest surprises from last night. Do you want me to start? Because I think we all know we're going to start.
Buffalo Party.
Murray. Buffalo Party.
Yes. 4 seats where they're party number 2 besting the NDP.
Wow.
I
honestly did not see that one coming. Did you, Phil?
Well, when I covered the launch of their campaign, and they said then they were being very strategic, and it appears to be a strategy that worked. Right? They could have tried to get more candidates in every riding, and they didn't run, I don't believe, any urban candidates. So I think their strategy paid off. They got attention in this election, even though they only got 3% of the vote. I mean, no one's talking about the Green Party, even though they got like 2.6 or something like that. So I think that strategy paid off. With 61 candidates, 60 actually, but
60. They didn't run in wall shakers.
Yeah. Wow, the concentration of successful Buffalo Party candidates out of nowhere is still shocking to me. But I guess the question is, how serious does Scott Moe take this right now? Does he actually finally have to say something? Because I have found it an irritant, and I've written a column about it today, how irritating I actually find it, that he will not denounce separation in this province. Even Jason Kenney has done that in Alberta, saying it's just not on. And his is always qualified with, I hear them, I validate their concerns, I know where they're coming from. I don't know if that's appropriate anymore.
Well, what's interesting, Murray, is that he did say something, of course, and he said it in his speech last night, very clearly taking the success of the Buffalo Party in those 4 safe Sask Party seats as a signal that he's been on the right tack in going hard against Ottawa, and I think that this can only vindicate him in that position and possibly make him follow it even harder, because we heard him say yesterday that he shares many of the objectives that those Buffalo Party voters conveyed through supporting a pro-sovereigntist party within Saskatchewan.
What's your take, Phil? Should he go harder at them, or is he thinking it's safe to use this as a political tool, political leverage? And if he does that, if he continues to do that, doesn't he annoy the hell out of somebody besides me in terms of this province? Because he's basically sending a loud message to everyone else that's not a Buffalo Party supporter, which obviously is the vast majority of people in this province. Nobody really wants to separate from Canada that I know of, and I would sure fight that notion. Isn't he sending a strong message to them that it's okay to have this conversation?
Well, I guess if there's moderates in the Buffalo Party, they would say they want to vote on separation, not necessarily separation. Yeah. But what's interesting is that the coalition that the Sask Party has held together so successfully, through 4 elections now, is traditionally not one that lasts in Canada. We saw that with the Progressive Conservatives collapse spectacularly and morph into 2 new parties and then 1 new party. We saw in Alberta, the United Conservative Party bringing together the Progressive Conservatives and the Wild Rose Party, because when Sask Party was supposed to be a meeting of Liberals and Conservatives, and at some point either the Liberals get tired of the Conservative bent of the party, or the Liberals get tired of the Conservative bent of the party, and you have growth somewhere. And I'm a little surprised that it's on the right, because I think most people would view the Sask Party as like, oh, they've left the center open, and that maybe the Liberals would grow, but of course we didn't see that at all in this election. Their worst showing in the history of the province.
Less than 0.1%.
Yes.
Everyone,
0.009,
I believe it's
yeah.
zeros. Yes, 0.09%.
I
And
have a
so it
better
isn't
chance.
just that we're seeing a challenge from the right for the Sask party.
I have a better chance of marrying Julia Roberts right now than they do of actually forming government here. That's absolutely the case. Let's play round two of since Phil brought up the issue of giant collapses. It's not really a collapse, but let's play round two of incredible surprises, and that's that the NDP could gain no ground, not just in rural Saskatchewan where no one really thought they were going to gain ground, but they lost popular vote overall the province. They lost it in most areas, and as it stands right now, while one seat up, which is kind of good from going from 9 to 10 to 11, in 100 years they might be government. The situation where they actually lost mileage and maybe Miley in a few seats is really kind of disconcerting for what was once the national governing party in Saskatchewan. Where did they go wrong when you were watching their campaign? I'll ask both of you, starting with Arthur.
Well, I agree that it is a surprise in the sense that it did look like they had a little bit of momentum there at the end. I mean, we all know that the polls were looking bad for them early in the campaign, but we got those two last-minute polls out of Main Street and at a research code that suggested that it could be a lot tighter. If those polls had have been borne out, we would be looking at a very different night for the NDP. They would be brushing up against 20 seats right now. Instead, we don't really know where they're going to end up. There's still 8 seats that we can't quite call yet, but it looks like they're going to be somewhere around where they left off at dissolution or lower, which is just got to be crushing some NDP spirits for sure.
Why did it happen in Regina? And you're right; those polls were horrible. They're like last polls of the bar. Where did they go wrong? They couldn't win north of Dewdney, and I'll get to Phil in the Saskatoon equivalency in a moment. But when you can't win in Regina in the traditional areas that you've held, and there wasn't as much of a north-south split in Regina because Regina was traditionally NDP, but certainly the north was always the stronger hold for the NDP. That doesn't exist anymore. What's happening there?
It's really clearly their chosen issues didn't have the traction that they were hoping that it would have, among some of those public sector workers, union voters who were well represented in a lot of those ridings. They were clearly hoping that things like Sask First, the lockout, things like standing up against purported cuts that were coming down the line that would obviously hurt public sector workers. Clearly, they thought that those were winning messages in Regina, but it's clear that they just didn't work as well as they thought. Now, there's one seat where they clearly had an unforced error, and that's in Walsh Acres, which should have been a winnable seat for the NDP. One of those north of Dewdney seats that you just mentioned, a lot of union voters, a lot of middle-class voters, should have been in play and could have been in play because we're seeing that the margin of victory for the Sask party is almost exactly the vote share that Sandra Morin, the ex-NDP candidate quashed for mysterious reasons, ended up taking, at least in the preliminary result.
Isn't that fascinating? Yeah, and I guess those that don't like the NDP and support Sandra Morin will call it karma, but that's absolutely the case. Phil, you know civic politics like nobody in Saskatoon, and you certainly know the city of Saskatoon and politics there generally better than I do. What happened in Saskatoon that the NDP couldn't gain at least a little ground?
I'll tell you tomorrow. Well, they may have, right? They held 2 of their 3 strongholds, which was Saskatoon Centre and Saskatoon Newtown. I don't think those were ever in doubt. The challenge they're having is in Riversdale, where they have a new candidate, and the Sask party is running Marv Friesen, who ran last time. They're leading at it. Obviously Miley is in.
I was sorry to interrupt, but let's start with Riversdale because I need someone to explain that to me, because I know Riversdale to be the seat of Roy Romano, Lauren Calvert. I don't know it to be the seat of anybody ever losing it. and give them sort of if they're New Democrats. And I just don't understand. Is there something changing in the demographics in the riding, Phil, that has made it that much more different? Or what happened specifically in Riversdale before you get back to the other seats that you were talking about?
Well, I'll just point out that that Roy Romano did lose the riding.
19 votes, 1982. Joanne Zazelenchuk. We'll never forget. Yes.
But other than that, yeah, it's been. But the Danielle Chartier used to represent it for the NDP for 2 rides, and those elections were close. They were not blowouts. They were not, Mark Friesen ran a very close campaign. And I think they were very close to being the difference of the Liberal candidate there. So the question is, when you don't have a Liberal candidate, where do those votes go? And, they probably went equal to both parties. But I mean, I think we have to wait and see on that one, because of course it's one of those close ridings. Miley's is another one, Saskatoon Meewasin. Is another one that's up in the air. He's trailing right now, but mail-in votes are going to determine that one. Saskatoon University. Let me put you on the spot there
for a second. What do you think is going to happen with those advanced votes in? If you had to guess, I'll give you my theory, but.
Well, my theory is, we've heard in the States a lot that Democratic voters vote more by mail. Like they make up a bigger share of the mailing votes. And I just got off the phone with an NDP. Spokesperson that said basically they think the same thing, that they'd worked hard to make sure that people that were leery about going to the polls, applied for mail-in ballots. So they're, I don't know that they're brimming with confidence after last night, but I do think that they think that favors them.
Here's my theory. Kate, remember Kate? You guys got a text from Kate?
Yeah, I remember Kate.
Heard from her a
few times.
Heard from her a few times.
She's pushy.
She's a pushy girl, I'll tell you, but effectively pushy, because she was able to identify the vote. I'm thinking that those votes that she identified were the ones that got to the advanced poll, that were kind of reminded to throw in a mail-in ballot. Is that maybe a factor, Phil, in terms of just a relative organization of the Sask party to get the vote out versus whatever difficulties the NDP had, not only in Riversdale and not only in Meewasin, but maybe throughout the province? But do you think that maybe the Sask party has an ace or two in the hole, and when these cards get played out related to the mail-in ballots?
That could absolutely be. I mean, it's going to be hard to say it till we actually see them. I mean, we actually see those tactics by, also Rob Norris, a former Sask party cabinet minister who's running in the mayoral contest here right now. He does the same thing. You get texts.
Oh, is that
right? And they seem to be doing a lot of social media with like, can I get your support? Like these posts that have people have to weigh in and say. So yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I don't think it's any mystery that the Sask party has a bigger election machine than the NDP does and more effective. But yeah, I guess we'll wait with bated breath to see what the results are tomorrow.
But Arthur, isn't the NDP supposed to be better at that, at the social game? They're supposed to have a younger audience. Certainly that was who their platform appealed to, was younger voices. And we heard a lot of younger voices on social media telling this old crank to stop writing columns and things like that, which might be good advice. But generally speaking, shouldn't it be the NDP that are able to capitalize more on not just the new technologies, but just the new way of doing things? They certainly sell themselves as being more connected to that crowd.
Well, this might be proof that the new technologies and buzz on social media does not translate into votes. I mean, I've certainly always felt that way, that what happens on social media is only tangentially relevant to what's actually going to happen in the campaign, particularly Twitter. Clearly, ground game in the old-fashioned sense may be the winning strategy, much more than focusing on social media, because as much as young people are prone to like or retweet or share, they may not be prone to turn out.
Gotcha. Okay, before we wrap, so go ahead.
I just want to say, let's not discount the pandemic here. The NDP's success, and I heard them talking about it in the BC election as well, that the success across the country has always been tied to getting their vote out. And that may have been more of a challenge during the pandemic. I mean, I know just under half of voters voted in person so far, and we'll see how many mail-in votes come in. But, the pandemic was definitely a factor in this election. I don't think anyone can deny it.
Well, good. I'm glad you raised that because that was actually the next thing I was about to get to in terms of other things that we kind of came as a bit of a surprise. The pandemic obviously wasn't a surprise to us, but how it played out. And I guess the other factor that I found surprising is how absolutely empty the polls were yesterday when you went to vote versus how strong the advance polls, the mail-in ballots were. Are we seeing a new change in how we vote in Canada and Saskatchewan? I guess maybe I'll start with you, Phil. What was it like in Saskatoon? Did you get a sense of advance polls versus what you saw at the polls, or?
Well, I voted at an advance poll, so I
Oh,
can't
did
I
you?
can't say what the polls like. But yeah, for the first time in my life. But I will say I don't know that you can get a trend from this. I think maybe people will say, you know what, I voted by mail the last, and I might say something like I voted in advance polls the last time, and I won't leave it until election day the next time. But I think it's tough to take anything from this campaign and say this is going to be a trend
Because
because
of the pandemic.
there's still people that like to go to vote on election day. They like the spirit. They like putting their ballot in the box and that sort of thing. Yeah, I guess we'll see, but I think it's really tough to pull lessons like that from this election.
So presuming this pandemic doesn't last 4 years, and I'm not ruling that out, we might see something different next election. Is what you're thinking or your working theory right now, Phil?
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Arthur?
Well, let's hope so. Let's hope so, because this sucked most of the energy out of election night. I mean, Phil and I were both at HQ there in Saskatoon for the NDP and the Sask Party, and it was just a bunch of reporters and staffers just typing away at little fold-out tables in a hotel ballroom. It was depressing, and I really hope that we see something very different when we're all back at this in 4 years.
Oh,
And
go ahead, Phil.
And one of the few times journalists actually outnumbered the other people in the room.
Yeah, I felt bad for Marley after that speech because it was almost like a sarcastic clap he was getting. There was so room to applaud, and that's tough enough to give that particular speech on election night, let alone to an empty room. So, I guess
they did the NBC thing and had screens with people with supporters up on it, but I'm not sure. It's certainly not the same.
It didn't feel that way, did it? It didn't. You didn't feel the burn, did you? I guess we have to wrap up. Once again, I just want to thank both of you for the job that you did for the readers of this province. Excellent work, guys. And I think we're going to have maybe one more. I guess we'll see. I guess we need to find out because we still don't know really how this story ends, do we?
We don't.
And we might not know for days. The counting starts tomorrow all over again.
Well, thanks very much, and we'll get to another election. You guys take care and good work.
Thanks, Maria.
Thanks.